Imagine for a moment a top leader, someone heading a huge global organization, millions of people all over the world.
Okay.
Now, picture them standing up in front of a big assembly and admitting, well, a pretty major public mistake.
Right.
An error that wasn't just missed, but actually misled people for, get this, almost 10 years.
Oh, wow, 10 years then.
Yeah.
And it's not about, budgets or some internal rule. It's about public health policy, specifically immunization, vaccination.
Okay, that's serious stuff, especially now.
Exactly. That's the, well, frankly, remarkable scenario we're diving into today. We're unpacking a very recent, very public apology from the president of the Seventh-day Adventist Church, Pastor Ted Wilson.
Ted Wilson, right?
And it was all about correcting the church's official line on immunization and vaccination, a topic that, as you know, has been huge globally these past few years.
Absolutely, front and center.
But this isn't just, oh, sorry, we made a mistake. No way. This deep dive is about digging into why this apology was so necessary. What exact words were wrong for nearly a decade, and what the correct words actually are.
Precisely. And maybe even more fascinating, what this whole thing tells us about how faith, science, and, well, the practical side of public health mix and sometimes clash inside a major world religion.
That interplay is always complex.
So our mission for you, the listener, is to unpack all the details of this pretty unique event. We want you to understand those subtle but really crucial differences in wording that led to this public correction.
Yeah, the nuance matters a lot here.
And we'll explore the core principles that guide the Adventist Church's whole approach to health. It's this ongoing, delicate dance, isn't it, between their religious beliefs and, well, what science tells us.
A balancing act, for sure.
To do this, we're going straight to the best sources. The official Adventist News Network, ANN, that's their main news channel,
Sure.
incredible,
Okay.
and a specific YouTube video transcript. It's from Whispering Hope TV, and it actually caught President Wilson's apology, like, as it happened, unedited.
Oh, interesting. So direct source material.
Exactly. So let's unpack this really unusual situation. Let's get to the bottom of how a key statement on health with such big implications could have been wrong for so long.
It really is a remarkable situation, and it tells you a lot about the challenges even really established, well-organized global bodies face with communication,
Yeah.
keeping it consistent, accurate, transparent.
Yeah, the scale is immense.
Think about it, tens of millions of members, almost every country. The fact that it took this kind of public, direct, almost off-the-cuff correction says so much
Right.
about the pressures inside and out, especially when it's about something as sensitive, as impactful as health policy. And specifically immunization, it really shines a light on the hidden complexities of managing information in these huge sort of decentralized structures.
That's a great point. And what makes it even more intriguing is how it surfaced. Like you said, not some planned press release.
No, not at all.
The trigger for this whole apology was surprisingly spontaneous. It happened right there, in real time, during a general conference session.
Which is their big global meeting, right?
Exactly. For anyone unfamiliar, the General Conference Session, or GC session, it's the top governing body for the Adventist Church. Delegates from everywhere meeting every few years, like their world parliament, basically, making the big decisions.
So a very public, very important forum.
The most public. And what's fascinating, as you hinted, is how this difference, this discrepancy just popped up.
Almost accidentally, it sounds like.
Yeah, it signals this immediate real-time need to clarify things, not some prepared statement they had ready.
So what happened exactly?
Well, President Wilson was addressing the session, giving his report or whatever, and a delegate, just a representative from the church body, stands up.
From the floor.
From the floor. Seems like no prior coordination.
Yeah.
And this delegate basically points out this disparity, he called it, a difference between the info President Wilson had got from the Secretariat.
The administrative arm, the record keepers.
Right. Between that info and what was actually out there publicly, what people understood about this key 2015 vaccination statement.
So not really a question, more like, hey, these two things don't match.
Exactly. An observation of a fundamental disconnect. And that's where it gets really interesting, because this wasn't on the agenda. It wasn't planned. But Wilson's response was immediate, almost instinctive.
What did you say?
He jumped in and clarified the situation right away, said emphatically, this is not a debatable item for that morning. It's not a time where we're going to be discussing it.
Okay, so shutting down a debate before it starts.
Right. Instead, he framed it very specifically. This is a time of clarification.
Ah, okay. Setting the parameter.
That immediate direct reaction, cutting through the schedule, it just shows how urgent he felt it was, how he recognized this was a big, problematic information gap that needed fixing right then. No delay.
Yeah, you can't just leave that hanging there in a meeting like that.
He wasn't inviting debate on the policy itself, you see. He was focused on correcting the public record about the policy.
And the core issue, as Wilson quickly explained, was that an official statement regarding vaccinations issued back in April of 2015 did not represent what was actually voted.
That's the crux of it.
That distinction is huge, isn't it? It wasn't a policy change. It wasn't a new direction. It was fixing the public record to match what they'd already decided almost 10 years ago.
Exactly. And he pointed the finger, so to speak, at the website that has the official statements of the General Conference. He admitted that was the source of the incorrect wording for all those years.
So it suggests some kind of internal slip-up when they first put out the voted wording. A breakdown in the info chain from the committee to the website guys, maybe.
That seems to be the implication.
Yeah.
Which naturally brings up the big question, the one everyone must have been thinking.
How does this happen? And how does it stay wrong for so long in such a structured church?
Right. Wilson anticipated that. He addressed it head on. Said that after the delegates' point and some quick digging backstage, they worked diligently to try to understand what had happened.
Okay, so they looked into it immediately.
Yeah, and he took full responsibility for the General Conference. He said, unfortunately on the website, did not represent what was actually voted, and it appears some advanced information was provided to the communication department.
Ah, advanced information. So maybe like an early draft.
Oh.
Or an incomplete version got published by mistake.
That's what it sounds like,
Yeah.
which could explain how the wrong info got out there and just stayed there.
And that leads right to the question Wilson himself voiced, didn't he? But Pastor Wilson, why didn't you catch that for 10 years? Question.
And his answer was pretty blunt. No excuses, we just have to take the responsibility.
Wow, that's quite an admission.
It is. Because this isn't just, a typo fixed overnight. It's a major decade-long information gap in a global organization about public health.
From an organizational standpoint, well, it highlights how hard quality control is for huge amounts of information, especially online archives. If an error gets in early...
You could just sit there.
Right. And it raises questions about auditing digital records, making sure published info actually matches official decisions. For a church that really values clear doctrine, consistent guidance, accurate statements, a 10-year misstatement on something like public health is, well, it's a profound issue.
Yeah, it makes you wonder about their verification processes, accountability.
Definitely.
And it all led up to a very direct, very clear apology. Wilson stated plain as day, so I apologize to you on behalf of the General Conference that the actual wording has not been available to you on the website.
A direct apology to the delegates representing the whole church.
Yes. And he confirmed right there that morning the correction had finally been made online.
Must have been quite a moment in the room. Relief. Surprise.
I can only imagine. This kind of public mea culpa from a leader that high up in a major religion is pretty rare, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. It really signals how seriously the leadership took this error once it came to light. It really does raise that big question, not just for the Adventists, but for any large global entity. How do you ensure accuracy over time, especially with sensitive stuff like health policy?
That's tough.
That phrase, advanced information was provided to the communication department, it suggests maybe a breakdown in checking between the committee vote and the public posting.
Right, verifying the final text.
It just underscores how easily even, well-meaning internal processes, if they lack rigorous checks and regular audits, can lead to big, long-term mistakes.
And for a global group where millions access the info.
Exactly. The impact can be huge, potentially influencing health choices, shaping how people see the church's stance on science and health. It's a powerful lesson in, digital information governance, really.
It really is. Okay, so this brings us right to the heart of it. What was the actual voted stance?
The correct wording.
Yes. What should have been public all along? What got corrected? And what does it tell us about the church's real, maybe more nuanced position on immunization?
This is the key part.
Wilson read the precise wording. The words actually voted by the Administrative Committee in 2015 on April 15th. The words that morning finally went up on the official website. This is where we really need to pay attention.
Okay, let's break it down.
So let's go through this corrected statement bit by bit. Every word counts here. It starts by laying the groundwork. The Seventh-day Adventist Church places strong emphasis on health and well-being.
Standard Adventist position, right. Their health message is famous.
Absolutely. Then it continues. The Adventist health emphasis is based on the Bible, the inspired writings of church co-founder Ellen G. White. Again, standard, and is informed by peer-reviewed scientific health literature.
Ah, okay. That last part, that sounds important.
Critically important. We'll definitely circle back to that.
Yeah.
Then it tackles the main issue head-on. As such, we encourage responsible immunization vaccination.
Encourage, okay.
And have no religious or faith-based reason not to encourage our adherents to responsibly participate in protective and preventive immunization programs.
So, no religious objection, explicitly stated.
Explicitly. Then it mentions the community aspect. We value the health and safety of the population, which includes the maintenance of what is known as herd immunity.
Herd immunity. Wow, they actually included that term. That's significant public health language.
It is. And finally, it does this balancing act. We are not the conscience of the individual church member, and we recognize individual choices.
Respect for individual autonomy.
But then, the crucial follow-up. These choices are exercised by the individual. Refusal of immunization is not and should not be seen as a teaching nor a doctrine of the Seventh-day Adventist Church.
Ah, that's the fine line. Choice is respected, but refusal isn't church teaching or doctrine.
Exactly. So if you're just looking for clear guidance, what does this all mean? It seems like, well, a very careful statement. Recognizing the group benefit, respecting personal freedom, but anchoring it all in both faith and science.
It is carefully worded, and when you really analyze the nuances, some points are incredibly significant. They really show the church's balancing act.
Like what?
Let's start with that phrase you highlighted. Informed by peer-reviewed scientific health literature.
Yeah.
That's not just a minor addition. It feels like a vital bridge. Something may be missing or unclear in the previous public version. Putting it in writing officially is a clear signal.
A signal of what?
That the church's health advice doesn't only come from the Bible and Ellen White. It actively includes and respects modern scientific understanding, scientific consensus.
So they're saying faith and science work together here.
Exactly. It's a powerful message, especially about public health. It tells members and the wider world that their approach aims to be evidence-based where it applies. It kind of shifts the perception, maybe, from just purely faith-based health to one that integrates current science, embracing knowledge from different fields.
That is a big deal. It sort of legitimizes using a scientific lens within their faith framework, tackles that old faith versus science tension head on.
Right. And then there's that incredibly direct line, no religious or faith-based reason not to encourage immunization.
Yeah, that's strong.
It's not passive acceptance.
Right.
It's active encouragement. It shuts down any idea that there might be some hidden theological reason not to vaccinate based on official church teaching.
Removes ambiguity.
Totally. It's a clear directive, not just you can if you want, but more like we encourage this, and just so you know, there's no faith-based reason not to. That's crucial guidance for members sorting through all sorts of information out there.
Especially with so much misinformation around vaccines.
Precisely. And building on that, mentioning herd immunity, valuing the health and safety of the population, which includes herd immunity, that's really telling too.
How so?
It shows they explicitly recognize a core public health principle. It goes beyond just my health. It shows a community focus, an understanding that my choices affect others.
Right, the collective impact.
It's not just about protecting yourself, but contributing to the community's health, especially protecting vulnerable people who maybe can't get immunized. It frames it almost as a civic responsibility tied into their health philosophy. Part of living healthy is helping keep the community healthy.
That's interesting, framing herd immunity within their values. Given how contentious that idea can be sometimes in public debates.
It is notable they included it. And then we get to that final, maybe most carefully crafted piece. Individual choice versus doctrine.
The balancing act.
Yeah. We are not the conscience of the individual.
Yeah.
We recognize individual choices. That respects personal autonomy, which is vital for any faith that values conviction.
Sure.
But then immediately adding, refusal of immunization is not and should not be seen as a teaching nor a doctrine. That's where the precision comes in. It's a delicate linguistic move.
How so?
It clarifies, yes, you have a choice, but choosing to refuse. That's not based on official Adventist teaching. It prevents anyone from claiming, my church doctrine tells me not to vaccinate.
I see. It stops anti-vax views from being seen as officially sanctioned by the church.
Exactly, which is critical for their internal consistency, their public message, and staying aligned with public health goals without actually mandating medical procedures for individuals. It guides without commanding.
That's a very fine line to walk.
Extremely. So if you put all these pieces together, connect them to the bigger picture.
Yeah.
This careful wording clarifies that, look, while we respect personal conscience and medical decisions, the church's official stance lines up with public health advice. It encourages vaccination, and crucially, it removes any official Adventist religious grounds for refusing.
It disarms that specific argument.
Precisely. And, you know, the Adventist Church has this long history of promoting health vegetarianism, no alcohol or tobacco, exercise.
Their health message, yeah.
This clarified stance on immunization fits right into that broader philosophy, which has always tried to optimize well-being through responsible choices. It reinforces that their health message is holistic, embracing natural approaches and modern medical science when it fits their core principles, aiming for the best health for the person and the community.
So this correction wasn't just fixing a typo. It was reaffirming their whole philosophical framework for health.
Exactly. It wasn't just semantics. It was about the foundation of their health message and how it's communicated.
Which actually brings us back perfectly to that delegate who sparked the whole thing.
The one who pointed out the discrepancy.
Yeah. Remember, when that delegate highlighted the problem, they explicitly said something like, we base our understanding of health on the Bible, the spirit of prophecy, and peer-reviewed scientific health literature.
So the delegate was actually stating the correct position.
Exactly. The position that the public statement had failed to reflect accurately.
And that's where the disconnect became undeniable, right? President Wilson even admitted it publicly.
He did. He said the delegates understanding the correct one, including science, did not connect with the material that President Wilson had received directly from Secretariat.
The material he was using, which was the wrong public version.
That's right. It just powerfully shows the internal confusion, the miscommunication that went on for a decade over this vital policy.
So it wasn't just the public being misinformed. Even parts of the leadership, or at least their readily available documents, had the wrong picture of their own official stance. Seems like it. Which suggests a pretty significant internal communication breakdown.
Wow. Yeah.
And this leads us to that crucial point about authority within the Adventist Church. Wilson made sure to emphasize this right after the apology, almost like damage control or just setting the record straight permanently.
What did he say?
He stated very forcefully, no one anywhere around this globe will bring up again that the Seventh-day Adventist Church does not place the Bible and the spirit of prophecy at the highest level of authority.
Okay, laying down the law, that's foundational for them.
Absolutely non-negotiable. The spirit of prophecy, for listeners who might not know, refers to the writings of Ellen G. White. She co-founded the church, and her writings on health, education, theology, they see them as divinely inspired, a guiding light. Her health writings especially are key to their focus on well-being.
Right. So this statement by Wilson isn't just about vaccines then. It's bigger.
Much bigger.
It's like a declaration about their whole way of knowing things.
Yeah.
Their epistemology, right?
Yeah.
How they understand truth and authority. Exactly. It clearly puts Scripture and Ellen White's writings as the ultimate lens. Everything else, including science, is viewed through that lens.
Did he elaborate on science's role?
He did. He acknowledged, yes, we value scientific input. He even said he could quote Ellen White writings, showing that, when understood correctly, science and the Bible agree.
Ah, the harmony idea.
But never do we put scientific information above or even equal to the Bible and the spirit of prophecy.
Okay, that's the crucial boundary line. Science is valuable, it offers insights, and ideally, true science aligns with their core texts.
Right.
But it never trumps them. It never gets equal billing. That sets a clear framework for how they integrate modern knowledge.
It does.
It's quite a sophisticated balance, really. It suggests genuine scientific discovery, properly understood, will ultimately support, not contradict, their spiritual truths. It lets them embrace science while keeping their sacred texts firmly in charge.
So definitely not anti-science. But science has its place within their hierarchy of truth.
Precisely. It's about finding harmony, making sure scientific insights fit within or complement their foundational beliefs.
And apparently this isn't some new idea they just cooked up. Wilson connected this whole clarification back to earlier discussions.
Oh, yeah. When?
He mentioned a very profound discussion and very important deliberations during the 2008 annual council,
2008.
where the health ministry's department policies were put in place in a revised format that strongly emphasizes the Bible and the spirit of prophecy.
Okay, that adds important history. It shows these principles, how they handle health policy, have been thought about deeply for a long time.
Right, it wasn't a reaction just now.
That 2008 council sounds like it was key in solidifying their approach, grounding their health message in the Bible and Ellen White, while still figuring out how science fits in.
Yeah.
So it suggests the core philosophy, health seen through faith, but informed by science, has been developing for a while.
Makes sense.
Which means the 2015 statement, the one that got miscommunicated, was probably itself part of that ongoing internal conversation about integrating everything.
Right.
So this recent apology, it's less a policy reversal and more fixing the public representation of a policy that was already based on this longer-term thinking. It confirms their health philosophy tries to be comprehensive spiritual wisdom, scientific knowledge, but always with the Bible and Ellen White as the ultimate guide.
It's affirming a carefully considered position, just correcting how it was presented.
Exactly. Not a new stance, just an accurate statement of the existing one.
Okay, so stepping back, why does this whole deep dive matter for you, the listener? Besides just understanding one specific church, I mean.
Well, it's a really concrete example, isn't it, of how complex big organizations are, especially global ones trying to give clear guidance.
Yeah, you see the potential pitfalls.
It shows how easily critical information, even stuff officially voted on, can get garbled in communication, and the real consequences of those mistakes, not just internally, but for public trust and potentially people's well-being.
Definitely.
Plus, it really spotlights that ongoing, often tricky dialogue between traditional faith and modern science, especially around urgent public health issues like vaccines. It's like a mini case study of a much bigger universal challenge.
A microcosm.
Yeah, absolutely. This whole incident powerfully highlights how incredibly important precise language is, especially in official statements on sensitive topics, things that touch individual choices and community health.
Words matter. A lot.
For any organization, but maybe especially one with millions of followers worldwide, getting public statements right, making them clear and accurate, it's just paramount. This deep dive gives us a fascinating peek behind the curtain, doesn't it? At the internal workings, the potential failure points, the huge challenge of it all.
It really does.
It's a window into how an influential faith group tries to square its long-held beliefs with evolving science and pressing public health needs. A really compelling case study in accountability and maybe adaptation in our complex world.
It's a truly fascinating case study. Organizational accountability, that dance between tradition, belief, science, progress. So what's the bottom line here?
Right.
I mean, it seems clear that clarity matters. Hugely. Especially with public health and deeply held beliefs in the mix.
Couldn't agree more.
So, recapping our deep dive. A major global church, the Seventh-day Adventists, publicly fixed a nearly 10-year-old mistake in how they stated their position on immunization.
Right. A decade is a long time for misinformation.
And the corrected statement, it clearly encourages responsible vaccination, says there's no religious reason not to, values herd immunity for the community, and makes it crystal clear that while personal choice is respected, refusing vaccines is not church doctrine.
And crucially, it grounds all this in both Faith Bible, Ellen White, and peer-reviewed science.
With scripture and prophecy holding that ultimate authority, it's a complex but now hopefully much clearer picture.
This whole situation really gives us a lot to chew on, though, doesn't it?
How so?
Well, think about it. In this age of information overload and, let's be honest, tons of misinformation.
Yeah, it's everywhere.
What does this teach us about the responsibility of big organizations to really nail down accuracy and be transparent? How can their internal checks be stronger to stop errors like this lasting so long?
Good questions.
And maybe just as important, what does it say about our role as individuals? The need for critical thinking, for figuring out what's truly official versus just, rumor, misinterpretation, or even deliberate spin.
We have to be discerning consumers of information.
Absolutely. It highlights that need for vigilance, really, on all sides.
And beyond the organizational aspect, it makes you think more personally, doesn't it? About that tricky balance between community health and personal conviction.
Mm-hmm.
That's something we all face, regardless of our specific beliefs or scientific views. Those moments where individual freedom bumps up against the collective good.
Yeah, it's a constant tension in society.
So how do you, the listener, evaluate information when it hits those intersections? Science, personal belief, community responsibility. Where do you draw your lines? What guides your thinking and your choices in these really complex areas?
It's not always easy, is it?
Definitely not. But this whole situation provides a really striking real-world example of just how complex and how important grappling with those questions really is.
Yeah.
Something to definitely keep thinking about.